The American Civil War had so many influential elements, from people to technology to supplies. One curious area to explore: did leather help win the Civil War? And if so, how? Let's check out a few examples of history in action and find out. First is the leather tanning process and accoutrements. Leather tanning in the mid-1800s for military accoutrements often took between 2 to 6 months for the tanning process. That can be a really long time when supplies were often needed quickly. The leather was used to make things like belts, boots, shoes, scabbards, cap pouches, and cartridge boxes, essential for activity on the field. Since they had to look and perform well, David Jarnigan and Ken R. Knopp via ConfederateSaddles.com suggests that federal guidelines mandated using a quality oak bark tannin for the tanning process. Now, tannins are things that usually come from plants or tree bark that help essentially preserve the leather long term. And so some tanners would use hemlock tree tannins. This is often called vegetable tanning. And this process could take anywhere from weeks to months, depending on what is being produced and the particular steps in that process that are being used. And so it could be a long time. And so some tanners found that instead of using oak bark, which is a quality tannin, they were able to use hemlock tree tannins. And the composition of that trimmed the process down significantly by a month, making production much faster. The dyes, however, that were used to dye the leather dark colors and black would not stick as well to the hemlock tan leather as it would to the oak bark leather. And so the hemlock tan leather, which they could produce faster, would eventually fade, and the oak bark would retain that color better. However, this would take time. So by the time they produced it and sold it to the military, it all looked the same. It would only start to fade later on in time as it was being used. So here's an example of 2 cartridge boxes showing how the hemlock tan one is faded to a lighter color. So it seems like there was a desire to produce these essential items faster. So even by cutting corners, as we could see suggested in an example here, it may help reinforce the idea that yes, leather was critical to the war effort. Next, we see Robert E. Lee's saddle. Robert E. Lee was overall commander and also leader of the Army of Northern Virginia. He would often travel by horseback, even into and during battles, to lift the spirit of his troops. His favorite horse was a gray American saddlebred named Traveler. On Traveler, he used a very fine leather saddle, as suggested by the American Civil War Museum and Encyclopedia Virginia. The saddle appears to be a vegetable tan leather with oak leaf stitching on a lightly padded seat. It has a prominent pommel and cantle for more secure placement while riding. Given Lee's position, it's possible to imagine him using this saddle to ride and give orders during battle, to travel to and from headquarters, and to detailed planning sessions with his generals. Does it seem plausible that it helped him in day-to-day activities and support, both physically and metaphorically, his influence on the war? It's possible, yes, that this leather played a part. And here we have Ulysses S. Grant's chair, or more so, a chair that he inhabited for a short but very important time. By the spring of 1865, the Civil War was coming to a close, most notably at a location called Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. He was there to negotiate terms with Robert E. Lee. Grant sat in a chair while deciding the future of the country would unfold. It is a fine wooden chair with a tufted leather backrest. In such a symbolic moment, was it important to the war? At the time, a likely unnoticeable detail in that room, given what was discussed and who was there. While over time, it has become a direct way to connect with that history and that moment. A support in the war effort, also both practically and metaphorically, to help end the war. When seeing these examples, one could imagine that yes, leather played a subtle yet prominent role in the war, critical in so many aspects of daily life, prominent leaders, and key moments. And while it of course yields honor and heroics to the actual people that were there, it's there almost everywhere you look. So what do you think? Did leather help win the war? Do you have other examples to discuss? Let us know. There are many ways to look at and learn from history. Here's to exploring, enjoying, and learning together.